What's going on, guys? Overman back again, and today we're going to take a look at Fallout 4 and discuss whether or not I think it's worth $60 and if it lived up to the hype. Now, before this game, I was pretty much a Fallout virgin like many of you might be, and I've always heard good things about Bethesda's games, so I was pretty eager to try this one out. So in Fallout 4, you'll start off by creating a character in an alternate universe that's progressed very differently from our own. At first glance, you might think that you were in the 1950s or something, but nope, you're far past that. Anyways, without spoiling too much, the bombs drop, you go into the vault, then you leave the vault in search of your family.
I love you. Oh my god!
So while I would have really liked a longer introduction sequence before the bombs dropped so that the characters could have really been fleshed out more, I did think that the story set things up quite nicely for your upcoming adventure throughout the wasteland. Now, throughout said adventure, you'll meet new friends, foes, and companions as well, most of which are pretty darn cool. But early on, you'll meet a super boring NPC, Preston Garvey, I think? Whatever. And he can become a companion, but I never roll with him because he's got no personality and he's kinda annoying, not to mention borderline useless. So there's really no reason not to go with Dogmeat, your lovable but savage dog, or your charismatic robot butler, Codsworth. But fear not, later on you meet several other companions that have a lot more personality than Preston, like Nick Valentine for example, who's probably the most likable NPC in the entire game, or the feisty journalist Piper. Overall, I think that the companions are a really nice touch and definitely improved my experience in Fallout 4. The wasteland can be a cruel and lonely place, so it's pretty nice to have a companion by your side. And it's not like they're just gonna silently follow you around or anything, they all have their own personalities with their own likes and dislikes. So if you're going through a mission and you're talking with the quest giver for example, your companion might jump into the conversation and throw in their thoughts and opinions. And your companions will also react to your actions positively or negatively. For example, if you try to haggle for more money for a job, Piper will disapprove. Now, if your companions like you enough, they'll share things with you about their past and even gift you some cool items. But if they dislike you enough, apparently you can lose them as a companion. Now, I never encountered this because I didn't piss them off that much, but I have read online that a lot of other people have encountered this. And I think that type of freedom is really cool in a game like this. But they're not perfect. I can't tell you how many times a companion has been standing in the doorway preventing me from moving through an area, or how many times I was trying to be stealthy and my companion just ran right ahead and totally blew my cover, and that was pretty damn infuriating. Now, the open world in Fallout 4 is pretty darn big, but more importantly, it's filled with areas to explore, NPCs to meet, and towns or settlements to discover. I really dislike it when games have a huge open world with nothing to do in it. It totally defeats the purpose of making the open world big in the first place. But not here. Thankfully, in Fallout 4, they do it right. And exploring the open world in Fallout is one of the most fun things you can do, and you can lose hours at a time doing it. And speaking of the open world, in this game you can actually add to it by creating your own settlements. There's a basic tutorial in the game to show you how to do most things, but after that you'll be able to build your settlements however you like. You can go around scrapping entire houses, cars, and just about anything else that you see for parts to build what you'd like instead. I think that this was a pretty darn cool addition to the game because it's like a game within a game. You can create a shelter for your people, then you can plant some crops to feed them, and as your settlement grows, you can assign jobs to settlers like running a store, farming, and pumping water. Now, this being a lawless wasteland, of course, if you've got resources like clean water, food, supplies, and caps, raiders will attempt to rob your settlement. So you can litter your settlement with turrets to shoot any unwanted guests on sight, and you can set up some guard posts and assign a settler to that post to watch out for enemies. Overall, I really like this mechanic, but the good thing is that if this isn't your thing, if you don't really like building like this, then you don't have to worry about it. You really aren't forced to build a settlement if you don't want to. You can pretty much just ignore this. However, you can't ignore building altogether. You will have to build a specific device in order to complete one of the missions, but I can't tell you about that for obvious reasons, but it really won't be too big of a deal. Now, speaking of your enemies, you'll have a decent variety of those to fight, including but not limited to ghouls, super mutants, raiders, and an assortment of mutated animals. And while I thought the variety of enemies was definitely nice, I kinda wished for a little bit more, but I think that's just me being picky and ungrateful. So to deal with these baddies, you have two main choices, either melee them or shoot them. Now personally, I felt like the melee was pretty slow and not that much fun for me, but you can definitely make it work, and I know many people actually enjoy the melee in this game. I instead chose to focus on guns, and the gunplay in this game is pretty decent. It's not really as sharp and tight as your average first-person shooter, but this isn't just an FPS. It's an RPG with FPS elements. That being said though, I know that this will turn off a lot of people, simply because they're so accustomed to the sharp controls and gunplay in other shooters, and as a result, Fallout 4 can just feel sloppy in comparison. I, however, enjoyed it though, at least after getting the hang of it. And if we're talking about gameplay in Fallout, we've gotta talk about VATS. VATS is a targeting system that will slow down time and allow you to pick which body part you'd like to attack, and then it'll show you how much of a chance you have to hit that target. I think VATS is pretty darn cool and fun to use, and the best part is it makes for some awesome ass kills. Now in addition to VATS, you'll also have power armor to aid you in combat. And power armor pretty much turns you into a beast. You can tank a lot of damage and dish out tons of punishment at the same time, but you're not invincible. You can still die while in your power armor, and your armor pieces can be damaged. You'll also have to keep an eye on your fuel. So because of that, early on I used my power armor sparingly. But as I progressed and got access to more and more fuel, I was pretty much able to use my power armor as much as I'd like. Which isn't really a bad thing, because power armor is pretty darn fun, but it can kind of be OP at times too. So as I said before, Fallout 4 is an RPG. So of course, it's got a bunch of skills and perks to choose from every time you level up. You have a wide range of perks to choose from that will enhance your gameplay experience and allow for some pretty interesting builds. Now this is my favorite thing about RPGs, as I really enjoy thinking about different builds to try out and matching them up with the personality of my character. However, this does introduce a bit of a learning curve to the game, because if you're anything like me and you're a Fallout virgin, you might be unsure about which skills are important and which aren't. So you just grab a bunch of different skills and you don't really specialize your character, which is fine if you intended for your character to be a jack of all trades type of guy. But for me, in my first playthrough, I felt a lot like I did during my first playthrough of Mass Effect 2. In that playthrough, I was still learning the game and its mechanics, so I didn't really know what I should be upgrading, I didn't really know which abilities to go for, etc. Now, I did enjoy that initial playthrough, but I definitely enjoyed my subsequent playthroughs a lot more because I knew what I was doing and I knew what kind of characters I wanted to build from the get-go. And I feel the same way about Fallout 4. I feel like while I really enjoyed my first playthrough, I'll probably enjoy all of the subsequent playthroughs much more, because now I have a greater understanding of the skills, perks, and factions. Since finishing the game the first time, I've started another character that I named Lucy, and I'm really enjoying playing as her because with the knowledge I gained from my first playthrough, I was able to put a lot more thought into what I wanted to do with her. You see, Lucy specializes in intelligence and charisma. Her preferred weapons are non-automatic pistols. Lucy navigates the wasteland using her charismatic personality to gain allies to aid her in finding her son, and she also uses her superior intellect and skills as a gunslinger to lay waste to anyone standing in her way. And as a mother, Lucy can't help but protect the defenseless and innocent from those who seek to exploit them for personal gain. And of course, that's a very common occurrence in the wasteland. And I also have ideas for a few other characters as well, one of which will be the opposite of Lucy. I'll probably name him Lester or something like that. He's gonna be a psychopath that specializes in charisma and strength. Lester will conquer the wasteland using either brute force or trickery and deceit. He has no regard for anyone but himself and will stop at nothing to attain his goals. His preferred weapons will be fully automatic weapons with a side of melee action if his enemies get too close. So if building characters like that sounded fun to you, then you'll probably really enjoy Fallout. But even if it didn't, you can still have a lot of fun here. I just want to mention that if you're new to Fallout and RPGs in general, you're gonna have to put some time in to learn the game and its mechanics before you can really get everything this game has to offer. It's not an instant gratification game. You get as much as you put into it. And also, I know that a lot of people get turned off by the pacing of Fallout, because it's not nearly as fast-paced and action-packed as a lot of other shooters out there. Now, this is by no means a boring, actionless game, but the pacing is a lot different from many other games these days, and I know there's gonna be a lot of people that won't enjoy that. So speaking of the RPG elements of the game, we of course have to talk about the conversation options in Fallout 4. Now, I know a lot of Fallout fans are disappointed by this aspect of the game because it's pretty clear that the dialogue has been dumbed down, and I can confirm as much by looking at some of the dialogue available in the older games. Now, sometimes you can carry a decent conversation without wondering what your character is going to say if you select a certain option, but other times the descriptions are far too vague. In fact, a lot of times the conversation options will boil down to sarcasm, ask for more information, yes, or no. And that's definitely something that breaks immersion, which is a sin for RPGs. And now, we've come to the section where I'm gonna piss people off once again. The graphics. I stand by what I said in my previous video. I really don't think that Fallout 4's graphics are up to AAA 2015 standards. And if you're upset by me saying that, hear me out on it. I'd like to juxtapose this game with the last game I reviewed, Star Wars Battlefront. In that review, I basically said that the game looked amazing, but the amazing graphics did not make up for all the other issues with the game. And it's the same thing here, just in reverse. While I think Fallout 4's graphics are bad, especially during the night, I don't think that the graphics ruin all of the other great things about this game. What kind of pisses me off though are the other performance issues that this game has. You see, if I had to guess, I would think that if a game looks really dated, then it should be pretty darn easy to run on modern hardware. But in this case, that just isn't true. While playing Fallout 4 on my PC, I suffered from frequent frame drops that were pretty darn significant. Towards the end of the main storyline, I was engaged in a big battle with lots of enemies fighting it out and explosions going off. And because of that, the frame rate tanked. And I'm not talking about 45 frames per second. I'm not talking about 30 frames per second. The frame rate dropped below 20 frames per second, which really hurt the experience and diminished the epicness of that battle. And it's not like I've got a crappy PC or anything. I've got a 970, which, while that isn't a high-end card or anything, it's no slouch either. And don't get me started on the long-ass loading screens, man. These performance issues were really freaking annoying, and obviously caused by an engine that just isn't cutting it anymore. And you know what? Just because Bethesda is known for this type of thing doesn't make it okay. If anything, if they're known for it, they should really be working hard on fixing it. Now, aside from the performance issues, another thing that bothered me was some of the side quests. And I want to make it very clear, it's just that some of them are kinda boring and uninteresting, while others can be exciting and interesting. So they're really hit or miss is what I'm trying to say, but I'd venture to say that it's more hits than misses. Oh, and not to mention that the side missions in this game offer some sweet ass loot, oftentimes better than the loot you get from the main missions. Now, the final thing that I really didn't like about Fallout 4 were the endings. You see, there's 4 factions in the game, and 1 ending for each faction. Except 3 of those endings are basically the same. And then you have 1 other ending. So in total, it's really just 2 endings. But no matter what faction you side with, you're gonna get the same ending cutscene, which kind of cheapens the whole experience for me. While yes, each ending leaves the world in a slightly different state, with different factions having different amount of power, that cutscene really makes it feel like there's not much of a difference at all, since your character pretty much says the same damn thing in all 4 of them. And it barely even reflects on the decisions you made just a couple minutes ago in that final mission, you know? But another problem I had with these endings was that I felt like there were a lot of other ways that I would have liked to handle these situations, but the game just doesn't give me those options. Instead, it gives me these very generic options, which feel really out of place in a game that's supposed to be all about freedom and nuance. Now, of course, I can't go into detail about what I mean here, because then I'd spoil the endings, so I will make a follow-up video that will contain spoilers where I'll explain myself. But overall, for the purpose of this review, I feel like the story kinda fell off during the final chapter. I was really interested in the story all the way up until like the final stretch, and that's where it kinda dropped off for me. So my final judgment, is Fallout 4 worth it? I'd have to say yes, if you're into open world RPGs, and if you're okay with some shooting mechanics and controls that aren't quite as sharp and fluid as most shooters on the market today. But of course, since this is a single player game, there's no rush to go out and get this one. While I think that Fallout 4 is definitely worth the $60 and I'm definitely happy with my purchase, that doesn't mean you have to go out and buy it for $60. You could wait for a price drop and get the same experience for slightly less. So keep that in mind if you're really strapped for cash or if you're interested in picking up some multiplayer games. Now, time to answer the second question. Did Fallout 4 live up to the hype? I'd have to say yes and no. I'd say yes because Bethesda didn't really lead me to believe that this game would be anything that it wasn't, but at the same time, they didn't say all that much about the game pre-release anyways, so there wasn't much to mislead me regardless. But I'd also say no because of the amount of fan-generated hype that this game received, which really isn't Bethesda's fault, by the way. The Fallout fans really led me to believe that this game would be orgasmically good, and while I think it's a pretty damn good game, I don't think it turned out to be orgasmically good, because there are definitely some issues with this game, and it's far from perfect. But of course, that's totally subjective, so please do share with me your thoughts on the matter in the comment box below if you're not feeling too shy. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash that like button, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow me on Twitter. The link will be in the description box below. That's it for me though, guys. Over, man. Out!